On July 2, 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan disappeared somewhere over the Pacific Ocean during their attempt to circumnavigate the globe. No wreckage was found. No bodies were recovered. The United States government declared them lost at sea. Case closed. But the official account of what happened to Amelia Earhart has never fully explained the evidence. Radio transmissions were received after her plane was supposed to have gone down. A Coast Guard cutter picked up signals that investigators later concluded were consistent with Earhart's radio equipment. Those signals indicated she had landed somewhere and was transmitting from the ground. The U.S. Navy conducted the largest search in its history up to that point and found nothing. But declassified documents show that naval officers reported finding debris that was never publicly disclosed. And on a remote coral island called Nikumaroro, 350 miles south of her planned route, the bones of a woman were found 3 years after her disappearance. Those bones were examined, catalogued, and then lost. And the man who lost them was never asked to explain what happened to them. Amelia Earhart was the most famous woman in the world in 1937. She had been the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic in 1932. She had set multiple aviation records and had become a symbol of female independence and possibility in an era when both were severely constrained. Her attempt to circumnavigate the globe along an equatorial route was the most ambitious flight in aviation history. She was flying a Lockheed Electra 10E with her navigator Fred Noonan, one of the most experienced celestial navigators in the world. On the morning of July 2nd, 1937, they took off from Lae in New Guinea on the most dangerous leg of the journey, a 2,500-mile over-water flight to Howland Island, a tiny dot in the Central Pacific. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was stationed at Howland Island to guide them in by radio. The communications between Earhart and the Itasca in the final hours were fragmentary and confused. Earhart could hear the Itasca, but the Itasca was having difficulty hearing her. At 8:43 a.m., Earhart transmitted that she was running low on fuel and could not see land. That was the last confirmed transmission. What happened in the following hours and days has been disputed ever since. The Itasca and other vessels began searching immediately. The U.S. Navy launched a massive search operation involving multiple ships and aircraft. It covered 250,000 square miles of ocean over 16 days and found nothing. The official conclusion was that Earhart and Noonan had run out of fuel, ditched in the ocean, and sank before they could be found. But the radio signals complicated that conclusion significantly. In the hours and days after Earhart's last confirmed transmission, multiple people reported receiving radio signals that appeared to be from her aircraft. A teenage girl in Florida named Betty Klenk wrote down what she heard in a notebook in real time over several hours. A woman identifying herself as Earhart describing her situation, giving coordinates and referring to an injured companion. The notebook survived and was later examined by investigators who found it credible and internally consistent. Pan American Airways radio stations in the Pacific picked up signals on Earhart's frequency in the days after her disappearance. A Navy analysis of those signals concluded they were most likely authentic transmissions from Earhart's aircraft. If the signals were genuine, Earhart had not ditched in the ocean. She had landed somewhere and was transmitting from the ground. The most developed alternative theory is that Earhart and Noonan landed on Nikumaroro, a remote, uninhabited coral atoll 350 miles southeast of Howland Island. The island was within range of their fuel supply if they had been flying slightly off course. It had a flat reef area where a Lockheed Electra could potentially have landed. In 1940, a British colonial officer named Gerald Gallagher was establishing a settlement on Nikumaroro when he discovered a partial skeleton near the remains of a campfire. He reported the find to his superiors, and a physician examined the bones. The physician's assessment, based on measurements, was that the bones were consistent with a tall white woman of Northern European origin. Earhart was a tall white woman of Northern European origin. The bones were sent to Fiji for further analysis. A British physician there concluded the bones were from a stocky male. That conclusion has been re-examined multiple times using modern forensic methods applied to the original measurements. Multiple modern analyses have concluded the original physician was wrong and that the bones were more likely female and consistent with Earhart's known measurements. The bones themselves cannot be re-examined because they disappeared from the Fiji Museum sometime after the 1940s. They have never been found. Other artifacts found on Nikumaroro over the years include a woman's shoe from the 1930s, a zipper from an era consistent with Earhart's disappearance, and aluminium panels that researchers have argued are consistent with the type used in Lockheed Electra aircraft of that period. None of these findings have been definitively confirmed as connected to Earhart. None have been definitively ruled out either. The declassified State Department and Navy documents from the search period show that American officials received reports from multiple sources about possible survivors on various Pacific islands that were not fully investigated. Japanese fishing vessels operating in the area reported seeing debris and hearing radio signals. Those reports were logged and then set aside. The full extent of what American intelligence knew about Earhart's final hours has never been made completely public. Certain documents relating to her flight remain restricted. The bones were found in 1940. They were examined. They were consistent with Amelia Earhart. Then they were lost. Nobody was ever asked what happened to them. That is where the story ends. Not with an answer, but with a box of bones that nobody can find.